Welcome everyone. It is Thursday, April 16th. This time of year, it's important that we do reference the date because things do continue to change and update. Not happening quite as fast, but still happening on a pretty frequent basis. So I want to welcome everyone that is here today. And again, encourage you, please drop questions and things in the chat box. And we will certainly try to answer your question or follow up with you. I'm going to move my boxes around so I can see a little bit better here. All right, I am going to go over some updates and then I'm going to go over some key things to think about for your business. If by chance the update piece goes a little bit long, I may save some of those questions for another session. All right, I'm going to start off with the bad news first and give you the latest update. As I was putting these together this morning, I had an email from Fundera, which is a approved lender, not a bank, but an approved lender. And our understanding is that the initial round of the payroll protection plan has been authorized and allocated. So just because you have applied, depending on what stage you are in, would determine if you were counted in that authorized and allocated portion. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the PPP later on, but I did want to let folks know that if you have not applied and gotten into the process, that as of right now, that program is fully consumed. Now, Fundera and other lenders, I'm sure, will continue to take applications. There's talk of another round of funding. Something else I read after getting the Fundera email from another fairly reliable source said that they did not think any funding would happen this week as far as an additional allocation of funds for the program. So don't lose hope. But I didn't want to mislead you either and let you think that there's still new funds available, because as of right now, it sounds like everything has been allocated and spoken for. All right, on to updates. I already gave you number one, wanted to get the bad news out of the way immediately. Quickly, I'm going to go through some of the steps in the process. So if you have applied, you'll have an idea where you might be in that process. And if you're going to apply, if you haven't yet applied and plan to, if there's more funding, you'll have a little bit of a better idea what to expect. Really key is going to be item number 3 in the updates. If you are fortunate to be funded, what's the next steps? We obviously want to maximize that and get your business in the best position possible. A quick update on unemployment for the self-employed. We'll go over tax updates, and then I want to get into some of the more thought-provoking questions for your business. All right, what is the basic process? Regardless of which bank or which approved funder you're using, it is the same process. Submit the application. It's a very short application. There's a little bit of documentation that goes with it, again, extremely short. It will be verified for eligibility and completeness. This is where it's really handy if you do have a banking relationship to have used that bank, because they will tend to look out for you. And you know, bankers don't know all the ins and outs of this. So it's good to have someone that you're working with. You know, they're trying to kind of check a box and look for certain documents, and it could be that those documents don't apply in your business. So having somebody look out for you can be helpful. It goes on to SBA for reviewing, and then SBA would approve it, and the loan documents get prepared. And again, you know, a lot of these steps are being done by your local banker or the staff of that bank, but there is some back and forth with the actual SBA department. So once it is approved, our understanding is that there's a 10-day window for loan documents to be provided to you. and for those to be signed. So if you know that you are in the pipeline and in the process, be checking your emails, be checking those spam filters. You don't want to miss out on an email that needs a signature or needs some additional information from you. If you get to that point and you have any questions at all on those documents, we'll be glad to be another set of eyes and take a look at those for you. So you sign the loan documents, obviously the other party signs the loan documents, and then the proceeds will be funded into your account. That is a very, very key date. If you are working with us, we need to know the date that that happens. It's a very critical date, and we'll talk about that as we get into the next step with the forgiveness piece. So the forgiveness, again, this is based on the 8-week window that starts from the date you get the funding. It is a combination of payroll, utilities, mortgage interest. There's also an allocation for your head count. So point being, this is not a do-it-yourself project. There is a lot that needs to be considered in this 8-week window. There are a lot of nuances in the language. You know, for example, it says expenses incurred and paid. Well, was that expenses incurred and also expenses paid? Or is it more of one or the other? You know, for example, your rent's covered. Well, a lot of times rent checks get written right before the end of the month to have that payment in for the beginning of the month. There's a little bit of fuzziness. Is it that next rent check? Is it the date it's paid? So those are the type of things that you're really going to need some help navigating and making sure that you're using the funds to maximize the forgiveness. So it's not a do-it-yourself project. I'll be honest with you, we have been fairly willing to walk clients through the PPP application process. That wasn't a big burdensome process, gathering documents that were pretty readily available. PPP forgiveness piece is going to be a project. So expect to have a little bit of cost involved in being able to get the maximum loan forgiveness possible. As I mentioned, it's based on an employee head count. If you've maintained your full-time equivalents, that's going to help in the forgiveness process. It is not an all or nothing thing. So if maybe your head count ends up being 80%, well then 80% goes into the formula. So don't lose sleep over not hitting every little piece of this, but obviously we want to help you maximize as much as we can. What else is covered? So you've got the head count that you need to meet. You have payroll cost. So again, this is gross payroll. It can also be retirement benefits. So that's an area where maybe payroll dollars aren't going to be as much as what they've been in the past to try to maximize that formula. So maybe funding retirement in there for employees may be an option. So that's where we can help you analyze and figure out what is going to be the best use of those funds. The other item that may fall into payroll cost if you have state and federal unemployment. So here's another good example. Federal unemployment, businesses normally do not pay that federal unemployment tax until the quarter that it exceeds $500. Doesn't mean that you can't pay it anytime up to that point when it's due in January of next year or whichever quarter before then. So we could help you make a federal unemployment tax payment if that's something that would help with your ratios and your head counts. In order for the loans to be forgiven, at least 75% of the funds need to be used for payroll. So again, those are examples of how we can help you boost that 75% ratio. You can use it on rent or you can use it on mortgage interest. as long as those obligations were incurred prior to February 15th of this year. Again, there's ambiguity on related party. If your business owner owns the building you're in and the business typically pays rent to the entity that owns the building and there's common ownership, we think that's going to count. We're not 100% sure. Hopefully there'll be some clarity come out on that. And we're also not sure about equipment, if anything falls under those lines for equipment payments. Utilities do count. So this is your standard utility type expenses, including internet, telephone. I've talked a little bit about the critical timeline already. That meter starts from the day you get your funding for the next 8 weeks. And there obviously is going to be documentation that will need to be submitted back to your banker for the forgiveness package. And there's also a critical timeline on submitting the documentation. You cannot lollygag around and wait and do that at the end of the year. That's going to need to be done in a timely manner as well. So feel free to pop in questions on PPP. We've talked about that quite a bit. I want to give you an update on unemployment. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink here real quick. So this came in yesterday late from the Indiana CPA Society with some information that they had gotten from Department of Workforce Development. We talked about this in the last webinar as well. Self-employed individuals can apply for the extra $600 a week that's coming through the federal funding. So normally someone who would not be eligible for state unemployment, get our pictures out of the way here. I don't want to block the screen for you. So currently someone who would not be eligible for state unemployment. If you were self-employed, you're usually not eligible to claim unemployment. However, with this additional pandemic funding, that is an option. They've got to create a new system so that you can apply. Oh, I've got a typo in there. The recommendation is to go ahead and apply now, just like anyone else would for unemployment benefits. You're going to be denied, but that will make it faster once they get this other part of the process open for the federal unemployment. So if you do fall under that self-employed unemployment category, go ahead and file. Don't be shocked when you get the denial letter, but it will make things a little bit smoother to go forward. And there's no estimate on when all of this will be ready to roll. We're all certainly learning flexibility and patience, aren't we? All right, tax due dates. If it was due between March 16th and the 14th, it's pretty much all due July 15th. And I was trying to think when all of this started on the, I put March 16th, it could have actually been a little bit sooner. But basically, if you had a due date this spring, if it was something that needed to be extended, we would have extended it. But if it came after that time frame, anything federal and for the most part state that would have been due between now and July 14th is not due until July 15th. Folks, be prepared. July 15th is going to be a big hit. If you owe for your prior year taxes, it's going to be due. If you normally make estimated tax payments, it's going to be due. There's a lot that's going to hit coming out of your bank account July 15th. Payroll tax filings have not been impacted by this. So you still need to make sure that if you're not using a payroll provider that's taking care of those filings, that needs to be done. And in Indiana, no deferral on any sales tax type of taxes. And property tax payments, our understanding is that there's going to be an extended grace period. Normally those are due May 10th. There's an extended grace period to make that payment where you will not have penalties. However, my understanding is if your real estate taxes are escrowed through your mortgage, that part has not changed. Personal property taxes for businesses that file personal property tax filings. If somebody figures this out, let me know. The CPAs in the state, we have been hammering the state society to lobby on our behalf on this particular piece. Those tax returns are normally due on May 15th. Each assessor can approve extensions. Now, historically, the past probably, I don't know, 10 years, they have not been very willing to file extensions, and it's only a 1-month extension. So personal property tax filings, it's still a little bit up in the air. One piece of good news, several years ago, Indiana went to a $25,000 threshold. If your equipment furnishings were under $25,000 original cost, you could simply check a box and not really need to fill out anything else. That's actually increased to $40,000 this year. So those of you that work with us, we will be working through getting these ready and getting them to you for signature. There is no electronic version of property tax forms. So that's going to take a little bit of coordination to make sure that we are mailing those things to you for signature at a location that you're going to be checking your mail and getting that. So stay tuned for more information on that piece of it. All right, doing my time. So I think before I get into all of this piece, I want to, I'm going to launch a poll. Give you a second there to answer the poll. If you would like to see us continue, we had originally put through today on the calendar. I've already got some material I want to share next week, so we'll definitely plan to do another one probably on Tuesday of next week. But just curious to know if this is something that kind of resonates with you and you feel like that you would take advantage of tuning in when you can. So we'll leave that poll up there for just a second, and certainly hope everyone's doing all right. It's a beautiful sunny day out, but it's certainly not warm. But it looks like everybody here is familiar with Indiana weather, so you know the joys of springtime in Indiana. So, all right, thank you for taking a minute there to vote. All right, what are some tough questions? These are things that you can be thinking about your business and use this as an opportunity to kind of assess where you are with the business. So we'll talk about 6 different points, and I've got a slide for each one. And again, you know, feel free to go ahead and put comments in or ask questions. So if you're in a business that has a little bit of a slowdown, what are some opportunities to fix things? What can you take advantage of during this time of interruption? You know, one example that comes to mind, church. Our church has been closed. Our church has a daycare. And so they're using this time to do a lot of deep cleaning especially in the daycare area. So that's just a great example of, yeah, we certainly have a huge interruption and not able to do things as normal, but how can we pivot and do some other things? You know, for example, if there's continuing education that you like for your team to do, you know, a lot of those type of programs are available online. If things are a little bit slow on the production side or the customer service side, then perhaps there's additional training or certification that you can encourage your folks to do. You know, I realize that some of those things come with a cost. So obviously you're going to want to weigh the cash going out the door versus the benefit that it might bring. You know, one way to look at cash flow this time of year with things being so uncertain is, are we spending on things that will truly turn around and make us money down the road? You know, maybe you're looking at e-commerce or beefing up your e-commerce piece of it, well, then this is a great time to dig into that website and things along those lines. So if you've got other ideas, you're welcome to chat them in the window or the questions, and I'll be glad to share information. But I think, you know, shift your thinking on it. You know, yes, it's a huge disruption, and yes, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress and nervousness. But if you can step away from that, take a deep breath, and rethink or kind of shift your view of things, I think you'll find a few little glimmers of silver lining in there to where you can at least find some opportunities to make some changes or do some things that otherwise don't happen to get done. And at the same time, it's a good time to reflect back on what you've learned about your business that you didn't know before. We've been in a business where we have some clients that still like paper and face-to-face interactions. And, you know, we've learned that a lot of them can adapt. They understand that there are some different ways to do business and have gotten a little bit more on board with some other technology tools. So that was comforting in the sense that, yeah, there is a little bit of resiliency there, that people will adapt to more or less go with the flow, for lack of using, or for using a worn out cliche. But it is good to find out about your business. You know, we were able to pivot relatively quickly for people to work remote. There's been some hiccups, and there's been some things that, if we're going to be doing this long term, we'll make some changes too. But we had never really full on, all of us worked remote before. So it is an opportunity to learn things about your business, you know, good and bad, good and bad. So again, you know, just find some quiet time and maybe put pen to paper, or if you're more computer type, sit there, type out some of your thoughts and go back and look at it again and again. So take this time and use it to find some ways to improve things. So if you could go back and do something different before their interruption, you know, what would it be? You know, in our case, workflow is our kind of weak point. So we've kind of been on the fence. We know that some of our programs are going to be going a little bit more in the cloud, getting away from some of the server base. We're about half and half. So we've been waiting on some of these other more legacy type programs to get on the stick. And, you know, looking back, if I could have had something else in place and not sat around and waited on those particular vendors to get up to speed, that would have made things much easier for us as well. So that's just a personal insight, but it gives you an example of the type of things to think about. You know, would you have delved more into e-commerce? Would you have, you know, maybe there's certain jobs you wouldn't have taken, or other jobs that you would have taken on. Maybe you would have had changes in your workforce prior to having to make decisions with this disruption. So it's just kind of, maybe fun's not the right word, but I do think it's a good exercise to think through some of those type of scenarios. And then a key point, not just now, but going forward, you know, what opportunities are there to better serve customers? You know, what could you have done different? What can you do now? What can you do down the road? Is it improving turnaround time? Is it, you know, they're depending on the business, obviously the answers are going to be very, very different and very varied, but I do think it's a good opportunity. You know, for example, doing these webinars, we've kind of talked about doing things like this, and it's, you know, we can send emails and we can send messages through our other platforms. everybody reads a little bit different and does things a little bit different. I know I don't read near the fraction of emails that I get, so I understand that part of it. So we feel like this is an opportunity to help share information and get, get hopefully useful information to you. Obviously something that we would not have been doing in April had normal tax season happened. So hopefully you'll find some of those opportunities for your business as well. And if you had your crystal ball and you looked back and had some piece of information, what info would that be that would help you recover quicker from the interruption? Again, these are kind of hypothetical, out there thinking type things, and some of us don't slow down long enough to do that very often. But I think it is a good exercise. This material came from a couple of gentlemen that I listen to their podcasts pretty frequently and have followed them for several years, some of the leaders in the accounting profession. And I've actually listened to it multiple times because each time it's just kind of good to think through. So, again, no right or wrong answer, but I think it helps us step back a little bit, look at the big picture, what data, what answer, if we'd had it, would have us in a little bit better position right now. And knowing today's information on the PPP, be in the front of the line on the government programs. And then I think probably the hardest thing sometimes is to really go down that path of what if. What if this drags on longer? What if people just don't return to the level of activity that they were at before? What if? Face some of those worst case scenarios and just kind of think through it. Sometimes thinking through the worst that can happen can really help you get through that fear hurdle of facing that worst case scenario. And at the same time, it's a great opportunity to rethink success. And that's some of the stuff that I want to get into when I do the webinar next week. Where to find some information on trends, where to find some information on, what appears like it's going to be more popular going forward. And sometimes, sometimes we're in businesses that just may not be viable, we'll use terms like, Buggy Whip. It's a Buggy Whip industry. And we all know that they don't sell very many Buggy Whips compared to what was sold 120 years ago. So sometimes we have to make decisions. And it's hard as a business owner. Your business is your baby. You've put a lot of sweat and tears into it, a lot of equity into it. So obviously it's being your baby, you want it to succeed and be the best that it can be. But we all know that occasionally, things don't work out that way. So I certainly do not want to make anybody think that we're not pulling for you and don't want the best success for you possible. But we do not want you taking on debt during this time frame that's going to dig an even bigger hole for you personally to climb out of. So again, I just encourage folks to use us as a sounding board, use us to talk through different scenarios, because there are some businesses that are not going to come out of this, and the statistics are fairly significant. Not just small business, but even mid-sized business. So it's going to be a game changer, and especially the longer it goes on, obviously that has a little bit bigger impact. So think through these different things, and like I mentioned, next week, planning on doing this again on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I do want to launch another poll here. Let's see. All right, now I got to figure out how to get back to, oh, here we go. Sorry, this is only the second time that we've done polling questions, so hopefully you can see all of those. And I gave you a lot of choices there, so I'll ramble on here for a few minutes and just give you a chance to answer those questions. You can pick multiple choice on what topics you think would be interesting. I do encourage you on our Almond Johnson Company website. If you go to almondjohnson.com, there is a big red button at the top for COVID-related information, and that gets updated every couple of days. So I encourage you to take a look at that. There's just a variety of information on there as well. If you happen to live under a rock yesterday and did not hear that stimulus checks have started to hit bank accounts, those did go out. There's a lot of, as you can imagine, different issues with that. The IRS has launched a website where you can check your stimulus. It's somewhat working. It's one of those where you have to put the right information in there. So do not panic if you don't see the right info, or if you're not able to get confirmation of a stimulus check. That doesn't mean that you're not getting it. It just means that something didn't work in the lookup aspect of that website. So be patient with that. And our understanding is if for some reason you don't end up getting it in 2019 or based on your 2019 or your 2018 taxes, if you've not yet filed 19, that will get trued up with your 2020 taxes. So you won't miss out. It just may take a lot longer. The good news was that they are saying that paper checks will come out much quicker than originally planned. So, all right, I am going to end that poll, and I believe I had, yes, I have one more on timing. So if you feel like it would be good to have these weekly, or if kind of a twice a month scenario would be a little bit better, or if monthly is often enough to hear me chatter on, then please share that information as well. So, all right, everyone. It has been the weirdest week of April 15th since 1990 for me. That was my first year working in public accounting. And, you know, normally on the 15th, there's a celebration in the afternoon and a big, kind of a big sigh of relief. And then traditionally the office is either closed on the 16th or, depending on how the dates fall, someday in there shortly thereafter. But you know, this year we were all scattered yesterday, so not really any big April 15th celebration, and we're continuing to plug away. If you've got an individual tax return that has been stuck in our office in the processing, we are starting to get back to the point of moving through and getting those reviewed, so stay tuned. And again, thank you. I just encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions and help you walk through this time, because I know there's just a lot of uncertainty. So we'll end that. And again, thank you, and follow up with us if you have questions. Take care.